Hi, everybody. We're back with the 5-0 podcast. I'm Haley, and today we are here with Katherine Boyle. You may already know her, but for those of you who don't, she's also known as the lieutenant's daughter. She's a public speaker, a law enforcement family advocate, and podcast host, among so much more that hopefully we're going to get to learn about today. But for our listeners who don't already follow you, get a quick bio, and again, we'll peel back like layers deeper. So just a quick bio about yourself, and then we'll get to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. My name is Katherine Boyle, and I grew up in a family of a lot of police officers. My dad was lieutenant of Special Victims Unit, and then his brothers were also cops. My mom and all her sisters married cops, and then a lot of their kids also became cops, as cops do. So I grew up around a ton of cops, but my background is actually in fashion. I have a career in fashion, and I lived in New York City for 12 years. And then I just recently moved back to the Philadelphia area. And that's when I kind of founded my business Beyond the Uniform.
Amazing. Fashion. Well, I'll have to get some advice for you. I actually wore a special shirt for you today, actually.
Oh.
But I'm just freezing in my house. It's, well, it's kind of for you, but it has First Responder Wives Club.
How cute.
And
I love it.
Home. I got to make one that says First Responder Daughters Club.
I know, we're left out, let me tell you.
Yeah, I got to make
First Responder. I had this one, the LT's daughter.
Oh, that's so cute. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Well, okay, we're going to get to it. We got a lot of questions for you, and I think that it's super beneficial that, like, parents listen to you and then other kids listen to you too. I guess it can go both ways, but I know I had a lot of parents write in who are like first responder parents, and kind of I told you earlier, but my dad's also a police officer, and writing all these questions for you made me like really self-reflect on like, how did I grow up? Like, how did this affect me, or did it affect me, or whatever? So it kind of made me think. So I'm really excited to hear like your take on everything. But how did you start your platform? Like you said, you're in fashion. So how did you get to this place where you have this big platform now?
Yeah. So I was, like I said, I grew up around cops all the time my whole life. And moving to New York, I always had, an affinity towards the NYPD. I always appreciated what they did. And the longer I was there and the older I got, I wanted to do something to support them and to show my support. And, I would say hi on the street and things like that. But I really wanted to let them know that I was supporting them. And so I would Google, how can I support police officers? What can I do to support the police? And all of the nonprofits would come up and like, donate here, donate there. And it just wasn't right. It wasn't what I wanted. I really wanted to be boots on the ground. And I wanted the cops to know that I'm a civilian who really has their back and appreciates what they do and the sacrifices that they make. Fast forward to 2020, and again, New York City. And at the time, the riots were crazy. I had people in my personal life who were actually participating in the riots and reaching out to me and sending me videos and photos and all of this stuff. And I was just having trouble sleeping because for me, I couldn't think of anything other than that person is someone's parent, likely someone's parent. And to me, all I could think was like, that person's supposed to go home and feed their family tonight or like put their kid to bed. That's not making sense to me. And so I started talking to police officers to get an idea of how I could actually support them and be boots on the ground and show up for them. And during these conversations, they kept bringing up my upbringing and my introduction and how I talked about my dad and my relationship with my dad. And they were having these revelations of like, my kid wouldn't talk about me the way you're talking about your dad. And I don't have this kind of relationship with my kids. And I was dumbfounded. I was blindsided. Like that was not the direction I was thinking by any stretch of the imagination. And so after a bunch of those conversations, I was like, I think this is something we need to talk about. And so I just kind of started talking about my experience and having more of these conversations. And now I have the podcast. And the more I do it, the more I realize like this is an untapped area and we really need to be talking more about it because these young people grow into old people who are impacted for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. No, that's really like, oh my gosh, there's so much that you just mentioned. So it sounds like you were like an outlet at first for people to be like, can you share this? Like as a civilian, like, because a lot of times, like I'm an active duty police officer. We want to share things that are actually happening. And it's like, we really can't. But our like civilian supporters can kind of shed light on what's like actually happening, like in the riots and stuff like that. It's like you said, I had to go home that night. At one point I worked like 36 days in a row. And it's like, no one realizes like I'm a normal person. And like for the supporters that were sharing like during those really difficult times, like that makes such a difference. And then obviously like not your whole identity, but like your value as like growing up in this family, it like all intertwines. So like you have validity to like your statements and everything like that. And I just think that's so important, like what you've done with your platform. Like I really appreciate it. And again, I didn't even think about it. It's totally an untapped market where it's like I don't share that much that like this is how I grew up. And I think it is really important. And we'll touch on more later, but yeah, we have so much to talk about. Okay. So, what are your hopes, in sharing what you do with the platform that you have?
So a big thing for me is awareness, because we're not thinking about this. Something I talk about a lot is a spouse has a voice, a spouse has an opinion, and he or she can tell you that you're taking on too much overtime, or tell you that you're acting different, or tell you that they're afraid, or they can communicate with you. Whether or not it's positive communication is a different conversation, but they can speak up for themselves and for the relationship. But a child is less likely to have not only the vocabulary, but the awareness that something might be going on in their personal life that is a result of what mom or dad does. So kids, that we assume or we think that our kids are fine, when really it might be just the matter of they're being quiet or they're being silent about whatever it is that is on their mind. And so I really want to just start this conversation because, like we said, it's not a conversation that's being had, and it's not something that we're really talking about a whole lot of. And so my biggest thing right now is just building that awareness and starting those conversations and keeping them going.
That's so important. Like, and I would love if my mom was like here, honestly, because I don't remember like exactly if we had those conversations, but I don't think we really did. So I think that this is like so important. So let's talk a little bit about your dad.
Okay.
What are the I love that you light up when I say your dad. That's how I feel too. What family values did your dad instill in you?
Oh gosh. So family values in general was always a really big one for him. Family first. And I think that is why we have the relationship we have and why he did a lot of the things he did in his career. It was always us first. And the job was meant to serve us as, putting food on the table and providing healthcare and things like that. It was more of a means to an end for him, especially like when he got into it. So just family values being number one is probably the first thing. Another one that he instilled in not only us, but even more so maybe in the people who worked for him is the adage, he who angers you conquers you. And I know we might get into this a little bit later, but it's something that I rely on and think about, and I have posted up there because of a lot of the hate that I have been getting. It's something that I really tap into, especially now at this stage in my life and in my business. Also, small moments can make really big memories, which is something I reflect on and talk about on my page. And then stand up for yourself, stand up for what's right, enforce boundaries, things like that, things that I know can be very difficult in the law enforcement space. It's something that he was very powerful about, something that he did as a leader and encouraged his people to do, and also us, and we continue to do that into our adulthood. And then the last one I would say is something that both my parents really instilled in us, and that's not giving in to peer pressure. My dad didn't give in to any of that kind of peer pressure, any of the shop talk, none of that. That was just not in his world. And then similarly, my mom never drank. She still doesn't drink. And that, I think, had a really big impact on, I'm just going to say me. It had a really big impact on me growing up, and even to this, working in fashion, working in New York City, doing all of these things that I've done throughout my life. It's something that I've really leaned on through a lot of different chapters in my life.
Yeah. And your dad, when he was the boss, right? Do you think that, or do you know that if he instilled like family values and stuff to his coworkers and employees, was that something that he wanted to make important for people that worked under him as well?
Yeah, it's something that he always encouraged his people to do, to prioritize his family, to go home, to be home. And he did a really good job of leading by example too. I always tend to refer to him as a mentor, because that's honestly how I identify him, and how a lot of the cops that used to work for him identify him as a true mentor, like a true definition of the word.
That really speaks volumes to like who he is, because there is, I mean, everywhere, good bosses, bad bosses, people who are okay, but the people that leave you with something, or like feel like they care about you more than just like a number, and care about your home life, like it truly impacts the employee, because I know it has for me, and I'm sure it has for you in other avenues. So let's talk about this a little bit. What are the highs and lows of being a police daughter? If you want to do maybe the lows first, what are some of the lows you experience?
I've been trying to think about lows, and I don't have any. And I feel so silly doing that, saying that, but I don't have any.
That's good.
Do you have any?
You know what? No, like not really to like the effect of today. But I think that like maybe I would have had lows if you asked me as a kid, right? Like I think that like my mom told me that like for like 8 Christmases until I was like 9 years old, like my dad had to work Christmas. And I'm sure that like back then, if you would have asked me this question, I would have said like, my dad not being home on Christmas or Thanksgiving or something like that. But like he made up for it in so many other ways that I wouldn't say it's like an actual low now. But I think that like as a child, I probably had some, or like missing sports games or things like that.
Yeah. But I will say, you as an adult now reflecting back on that is what really matters, because he
right, and I don't feel that at all.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. So yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good point. My dad didn't usually miss holidays, or if he did, he would like finagle his schedule so that it didn't really impact us. Like on Christmas, he would work at night so that he could be there in the morning when we were opening presents.
Right.
He did miss like dance stuff, but and like sports stuff, but I never felt very impacted, because my mom would bring our aunts instead, and like it was just a family affair. And so like for every low, I feel like it was kind of combated by whatever they did to kind of make up for it in some way, I guess.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. But they do have such strange schedules, like compared to like the average dad. Yeah, not like a 9 to 5. So I'm sure it's like when we were younger, we probably felt it more. But like, yeah, like you said, now I can't say anything bad.
But
what are the highs?
I love that. So the highs, I've always thought it was really cool. Like my dad is a literal hero. Like he's my hero, sure, because I'm his daughter and I'm a daddy's girl. But he's also very deeply and seriously impacted people and their families for the better. And I've always just thought that was so cool. And I've always just admired that about him and his job. So I think that's like the biggest high for me.
Yeah, for sure. It's like your dad's a hero and he's a real life hero.
Exactly. Like,
It's
not
so
everyone can
cool.
say that. That's really cool to me.
Yeah, it is. Um, how do you, we had some questions about it too, but how do you connect with friends and family outside of law enforcement or like people that don't have like your experience?
So for me, I actually don't have a ton of people in law enforcement in my personal life. Obviously, through my platform, I've met a whole lot more who are like my age and things like that. But for me, I've always just kind of been surrounded by non-law enforcement. My parents didn't really have law enforcement people in their circle. So it was always kind of second nature for me to just like not hang out with the law enforcement community, to be honest.
That's good. I think that your parents had like other friends and other people surrounding you. I don't know if many people, I feel like that's the smaller end. I feel like most law enforcement people, workers, have more law enforcement friends and then they bring them around and then they like talk about cop stuff and it's just like a whole thing. But I think that by your parents doing that, probably made for a better future for you in the long run.
Yeah, I agree. And I talk about this quite a bit. I should probably talk about it more just because I feel very strongly about having relationships outside of law enforcement because I think that as positive as it can be, I mean, obviously you need people in your circle who understand literally what you're going through when you're going through something like the traumatic events and stuff. Right. You and your kids still live in society and you still need to be able to disconnect from all of that negativity and disconnect from seeing the worst of people. And you need to not only exist, but you need to excel in like the real world. And your kids really need to. So like having that community outside of law enforcement, I think is so crucial. And my dad agrees. I've talked to him about this at length because again, you have to live in the real world. You have to disconnect from all that negativity at some point. And then if you think like big picture on the other side of retirement, you need those civilian relationships to carry you through that.
100%. Or else you're just going to be talking old stories and wishing and you would still be there and there is a life outside. So I totally agree. I think it's something that people do need to talk about more and like do more. And me myself included. And I do cherish my friendships that are non-law enforcement friendships. I cherish them because I love that we have that different type of friendship and we talk about different things and I keep them really close because I don't want to lose them. I'm like, I need you for my sanity.
Yeah, exactly. They need to be able to balance you out.
Totally. Yeah, 100%. So, what, okay. So with so much going on and, in your life and balancing all the things that you're doing, how do you maintain your balance? Just for like other even women listening to this who want to be entrepreneurs or start their own business or be public speakers, how do you maintain this balance?
Oh, that's a good question. I am pretty good about, well, for one thing, I work from home. Like my real job, my fashion job, I work from home. So that's definitely a leg up. I'm also a fitness coach, which is also done from home. And so having that is kind of like, that's like a built-in hack, I guess. But otherwise, I am pretty good about having like a cutoff time at night in the evening. I could be better about being on my phone after my cutoff time, but like I will leave my office, close the door, turn off the lights, like, and then it's time for, me and my husband to do whatever. I also take advantage of the weekends. Like I will set a time block for Saturday to get a bunch of work done, and then I will log off for the rest of the weekend. And with some of like the more day-to-day stuff, I live for my morning routine. I will always romanticize the crap out of my morning routine and like
I love that.
savor my cup of coffee with my cat, and like I always light my candle, and it's a whole thing. And that's when I like do my to-do lists, and then I use that for the rest of my day. So I think that's kind of what I do, what I try to do. I could probably be better about balance, to be honest.
Well, we all could, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
is that something that your parents like help teach you, like the balance and the prioritizing your time?
Probably. They were always very intentional about their time and about everything, to be honest. They made all of their decisions like very consciously. Nothing was like fly by the seat of your pants or we'll figure this out. It was like, when my older sister was born, my mom was like, I'm not going back to work. I need to be home with this baby. So she made the decision that she was going to be a stay-at-home mom, and that they decided that they were going to need to figure out how to make things work on just my dad's salary.
Right.
So I think starting especially with that and moving forward, they needed to be very communicative. They needed to make the most of whatever time they did have, whatever money they had. And like, also, I think I mentioned it, but making the most of whatever moments we had, like small moments were big because my dad wasn't always there because he needed to be at work. And so I think I think their intentionality with us and with their time probably spilled over into my adulthood, especially more now. So like now that I'm on the other side of 30, when I was in my 20s, like there was no balance.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But your dad obviously is like such an accomplished man that it probably drives you to like keep doing like what you're doing, like all these like podcasts, and fitness and all this stuff that you're putting on your plate. It's probably subconsciously because you watched like, and your mom too, being a stay-at-home mom, raising kids on your own. I couldn't do it. And watching your parents like do so much with what they had probably inspires you to be like such a hard worker that you are today.
Yeah, I definitely get my work ethic from both of them. Like there's no doubt about it.
Yeah, for sure. I always like, my dad always jokes and he'll say like, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. And I'm like, why are you still like working so hard? Like, and I always joke, I'm like, just retire, just relax. And
oh my gosh,
and I'm just like, well, this is your fault that I can't stop, So, so next question, we're going to talk about like grief and trauma a little bit.
Okay.
And I'm sure that your dad's experienced a lot, and I don't know your personal experience, but when it comes to grief and trauma, did you ever watch your dad like decompress from traumatic incidents, or has your dad taught you any tips, or have you observed anything about him? I'm sure he's had coworkers pass away, dealt with horrible things at work. Can you touch on that a little bit, and how maybe he dealt with it, or you dealt with it, or your mom?
So in my memory, so obviously grief and trauma are out of my scope, but in my experience and my memory, I don't really recall. There's no doubt about it that he experienced it. He was lieutenant of the Special Victims Unit. Like he definitely saw a lot. But how he kind of handled it, I think, was with my mom behind closed doors. They were very good about keeping it away from us and not, I mean, I talk about sometimes like I didn't understand what my dad did until I was almost an adult. Like, it didn't really register. I did not know. When I was little, too little to remember, I was 2, my cousin was killed in the line of duty. So I don't remember how that sort of worked out, or what he did to kind of navigate that. I know that it definitely took a toll. he and my dad were very close, so I know that it took a pretty big toll on my dad. I did ask him about this, and he said, uh, so I asked him about like grief and trauma and how cops could deal with it, and he, he acknowledged like cops don't really talk to people. They prefer to stay in their circle, stay around people they know. They don't trust outsiders. But what he did say is find a leader that you can trust. And so what I said in response was like an LT Boyle. But he said, if you can find a leader within, whether it's in your department, someone else's department, now in the world of, law enforcement, mental health, online spaces, there's all kinds of people you can reach out to and work through it. Even if you're not going to see a specialist or a professional in the space, see if you can talk to a trusted leader in the space just to get some of those thoughts out. I would also say, just kind of from my experience and reflecting back on my life growing up, having had a cousin who was killed in the line of duty, is honoring their memory goes a really long way. And I know you know that, and I know that you're doing that.
Yeah, that's my next question too, just about your cousin and how your family kind of went about losing your cousin in the line of duty.
Yeah, so after he was killed, my uncle, his father, and his best friend at the time started a scholarship fund. So they do have a scholarship fund. It was actually established in 91 when he was killed. So it was kind of like the first of its kind. Now they're a little bit more common, but back then they were not.
Yeah.
And they started the Daniel Boyle Scholarship Fund, and they raise money every year. It's still going strong. They've given away $2 million, I believe, to kids in inner city Philadelphia to go to Catholic schools who can't afford it.
Wow.
And it's still going strong. They're still raising money. They're still sending kids to school. And everybody really loves the gatherings that they put on. So it's really amazing.
So you as a child and growing up, you knew someone close that, died in the line of duty, and you watched your family basically, instead of, showing pain, I guess, they're showing more of purpose. Like they're displaying to you, like, yes, he passed away, and yes, it's in the worst way possible, but like, look what good we're doing in his honor and in his name. And that probably reflects on how you go about like life and death and honoring people and stuff like that, which we probably don't even really realize until we talk about it. But
yeah,
I think that's so great that they turned that into something positive, which is amazing, which is what I'm all about.
I agree. I love that.
Yeah.
What you're doing.
So tell us a little bit about your podcast, or not a little bit. Tell us a lot of it about your podcast and how you started it, why you started it, what we can expect to hear when we listen to it.
Yeah, my podcast is Beyond the Uniform with the LT's Daughter, and I interview active and retired law enforcement, but I'm also starting to interview more and more adult children of police officers. So I'm going to have to get you on there because I can't always find them. They don't always identify themselves.
I know. Yeah.
So
it's not really talked about.
Exactly. So yeah, I love to have on the adult children of law enforcement to get their perspective. They always have like just the coolest stories to tell, and it's just cool because we get to compare stories and talk about things. And then also, like I said, active and retired, and they can share their stories about being parents as well as police and all of the nuances and the obstacles that come with that. And I just love having the opportunity to share these people's stories. I think it's so cool, and I'm honored to be able to do it. That's why I started doing it, because like I said, I was having these conversations, like personal
I'm sick too, girl. I've been coughing and sneezing for 3 weeks. So you take your time coughing. She's coughing if you're listening on the pod. And something's going around, and it's clearly going from Florida to Chicago to Philadelphia. So it's
Oh my God.
good. I swear to God, I'm right there with you. I have my tissue literally sitting next to me. So don't, yeah, I feel you. Don't worry.
Okay, so like I said in the beginning, I was having these conversations and these people were sharing their stories, whether they meant to or not. And I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm just crying because of the cough. And so I wanted to have more of that and have more of these conversations and let other people beyond just me hear stories that they could maybe resonate with or even learn from.
You're having all these important conversations and you're like, I need people to hear it. Like I want people to listen to it. I'm having all these conversations that they should.
I need other people to hear them. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So, we are going to get into questions from my followers. We'll probably do one and then we'll take a quick break.
Okay, great.
Okay. Okay. This is a big one. So,
okay.
I'm scared for my daughter to become a cop. She starts the road next week. Any advice for me to be a supportive parent?
Yeah, that is a big one.
Yeah.
I mean, support her. Listen to her. Be there for her. And be that outsider that, Haley, you and I were just talking about. Be that person who can offer the other side of the coin. She's going to start to see some of the horrific things that police officers see. And that might change her perspective on things. And so be that guiding light, be that beacon who can, be there and kind of balance out some of that negativity that she's going to be exposed to. And don't, combat whatever she's exposed to, because that is, her reality. But I think just being the other side of that coin for her and being that, that I always say, like, a foot in each world, be the foot in that world for her, and be able to have open conversations if that's what she wants to have or not. If she doesn't want to have an open conversation, she just wants to sit, do that. Honestly, I think that is probably some of the best things you could do. Don't stress yourself out. I am not one that you will ever hear encourage listening to the scanner, the Find My iPhone.
Right.
I am,
oh my gosh,
not of that mindset. I mean, granted, I grew up in the 90s, but I think in general, as a society, we're too connected. And
couldn't agree more. I think that's amazing advice.
And as civilians, we see the worst on social media and media. We don't see the good things. We don't see the people coming up to the police officers and thanking them for what they're doing.
Right.
Don't know about the positive things that happen. It's not all bad. There are positive things that happen, and there are mundane things that happen. And so I think keeping that in mind and not getting too caught up in a lot of what's being put out there and perpetuated by the media and by social media is going to be very important going into this next chapter.
Yeah. I think that's incredible advice, like beyond. Like that's better than I could have said.
Oh,
I didn't think about like seriously, like, and my mom's down law enforcement too. And I forget that she's like a civilian that I'm really close with. Obviously, my mom's my best friend, but I never think about it like, oh, she's non-law enforcement, ally, friends, someone to talk to that's like not in this world. So I think that's like totally important, and we don't even really like think about that. And then, I would never want to hand my mom a radio and have her listen to what goes on. That would just stress her out completely. So totally valid. Very good points.
Yeah, remember, it's no news is good news for a reason.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We are going to get back to more of those questions that we have from some of my followers. So next question. Did your dad talk about work when he came home? Did you know about his day-to-day struggles?
No. He talked to my mom. He didn't talk to us. I did not really understand what he did until I was in 8th grade. He worked a very high-profile case, and it was one that I think he felt like he could talk about in front of us. It was a missing, kidnapped child, so it wasn't what you might typically think of when you think of Special Victims Unit, and so it was a little bit, it was less graphic, I guess you could say, and so it was a little bit more okay to talk about at the dinner table around young kids, and so that's the first I remember really understanding or having any kind of idea of what his job was or what it entailed. So no, around us, he didn't really talk about it. I think he did maybe talk about it around my brother a little bit more because my brother is a boy and I think he was a little bit more interested and probably had a little bit more of a stomach for it. But no, not around us.
So that leads me to my next question. Growing up, did you feel any different than other kids in school?
No. We grew up, so I grew up in Philadelphia, but we grew up in an area, the Northeast Philadelphia, which is essentially like the area where all the cops and firefighters lived. You had to live in the city to be a cop, and so that like little pocket of the city is where a lot of them kind of flocked to. So we were kind of surrounded by a lot of working class parents and the kids of working class parents. And if the other students' kids parents weren't cops, then they were probably like firefighter or post office or something similar. So it was not like strange at all.
Yeah, it's kind of like where my parents lived too, like where I grew up too. It was like a lot. It was like the same, like working class parents, blue collar families, firefighters, city workers, stuff like that. So, okay, we kind of touched on this earlier, but if your dad missed a holiday, how did your mom explain that to you?
So growing up, like I said, all of the men in my family were cops. So it was like a literal conversation. Who's going to miss Christmas this year? Like it was just accepted. It was someone was going to miss Christmas. Someone was going to be late or in uniform or running out the door at some point. So I think I might be in a bit of a unique situation where it was just part of our lifestyle and we all just kind of knew someone was going to miss it. But in my own like immediate family, I think our parents, well, one, like I said, my dad was very intentional about Christmas. Like he would work the other holidays. Christmas, on the other hand, was one that he would do everything in his power not to work. Or if he did have to work it, he would work it out so that he would go in the evening after we've already kind of had our festivities. So that like the important things he was there for.
Right.
And then beyond that, I think they would just do whatever they could to make whatever day they needed to make fun and important. And we never really questioned any of it because it was just very normalized to us. They didn't like make a big deal out of it. My mom was never like, oh my God, you're never home, or oh my gosh, you're always working on Christmas. Like there was none of that. It was just like, all right, you got work tonight, and that's kind of it.
Like that is also important because I think maybe if someone has been in a relationship with someone else for a while and then starts dating an officer or firefighter or something, they may not understand at first that like the schedule and like the sacrifices, but the fact that they kind of like grew and build this family together, your mom just like knew like this is it, like this is the norm, and it became like a normal conversation for you guys. So I think the same for me as well. It's just kind of like I just kind of knew it, and now it's like they do it for me. we'll celebrate like
Aw.
Christmas on like, December 16th or something, or, the weekend before Thanksgiving, we'll have our Thanksgiving. So it's like you said, like making up for it in other ways, making it fun, accommodating. Totally get that. Okay. All right. How do you navigate any hate you get online?
Yeah, that's so the one thing I mentioned earlier, he who angers you conquers you. I try to remember that, especially I just had a reel go viral. It has almost 2 million views. And
wow.
It's like, it's been such a roller coaster of emotions because it's been very impactful for some people. And I've had such amazing conversations come out of it. But the trolls are trolling.
Oh my God, girl.
I honestly, I think that people were people in that circle were posting it and sharing it so that more people would come on my page because that's how much I was getting all at once.
Yep.
And I think for me, like I've never really let things like that kind of get to me, whether it's police or other related. And I think that goes back to how we were raised and standing up for myself and standing up for what's right and the boundaries and all of that stuff. So I've always kind of taken things like that in stride. I have a lot of people telling me to like block and delete, and I haven't been doing that. I block and delete the violent ones because I've had like death threats and stuff. So they go. But otherwise, I've been keeping them. And on some of them, I try to make conversations because honestly, like if you're actually open to having a conversation, then let's have a conversation. Most of them aren't, and they end up blocking me anyway.
Right.
Which is kind of satisfying.
Yeah.
But I welcome conversations. Like I'm not going to stand here and say that police officers are perfect across the board, but they're also not as evil as everyone makes them out to be. So like, let's have a conversation. And if you're open to hearing my side, then let's do that. So I try to keep that door open. Hasn't gone very far, but I try to keep it open. And then again, just keeping in mind that adage of he who angers you conquers you. And the other thing I think that I've been doing, and I didn't even realize I was doing this, but I've been reposting a lot of them. And initially I was just reposting them because some of them were like funny or ridiculous or like just off their rocker. And so I was just kind of sharing them. But from that, people were like, engaging with me and offering support and offering reinforcements and just validating me and my feelings and things like that. And I think that actually helped more than I had anticipated it being, because it just felt like, okay, I'm in the right place. This hate is worth every second of it because of, what else is happening.
Exactly. And there's a lot more people that support you that don't. It's just that the meaner voices sometimes feel louder.
Yes.
What is the reel about for our listeners?
It's 3 things that we were taught as law enforcement kids that our friends were not taught.
Interesting. What are those 3 things?
The first one was we never put our names on anything. Our first names, because that's how creepers pretend that they know who you are. The second one was to leave a light on in the house when you leave the house so that no one knows or someone thinks you're home. And then the third one was if you get pulled over by a cop, roll down all your windows.
Amazing. I love it. You should do those like weekly.
I know. I think I might.
Yeah, because I know that there's more.
Oh, yeah. There's a ton more.
Yeah. Oh, my God. That's so cool.
The thing is, because then people started sharing theirs in the comments. And I was like, I didn't even realize that my dad taught me that because he was a cop. Like, I just thought
you're just saying this now, too. I'm like, yes, but like, I'm realizing it.
One that really made it click was my dad always taught us if you're stopping behind a car in front of you, stop far enough back so that you can see their full back tire. And I always thought like, that's dadding. And it come to find, no. And I concurred with him. Like, it's for accidents. It's for carjackers. It's for if someone tries to get in your car so that you can escape. And I didn't realize that was like So some things I'm still trying to like hash out what I was taught that was like law enforcement based versus just like my parents being my parents.
That is like really good, like little series. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. You don't even realize. Okay. So, where do you see you and your platform going from here? Do you have any hopes of dreams of where you want to take it? Or what do you see next?
Definitely. I mean, I feel like I have so many scrambled thoughts. I really want to do a mastermind for law enforcement officers and one for law enforcement spouses to just get them together, get them supporting one another, and get them talking about their kids and how to raise their kids in this world with the support of other positive law enforcement and law enforcement spouses. Because, like, we all know that there's a lot of negativity in this job and in this space. And so I really want to be able to bring together the people who, because some of the hate on that post, they were cops. I really want to bring
crazy, right? Yeah.
People who want more for themselves and want more for their families and offer that support to them. So, you know, if someone in some small department in the middle of nowhere just has like, you know, the curmudgeonly old man working with him who like doesn't want to hear about anything, he can come and be a part of something bigger with other cops who want to talk about things and want, like I said, want more for their kids and want to improve their way of life and want to think about what's on the other side of retirement and things like that. So I really want to do a mastermind for both parties. Because you can't have one without the other. Both people need to be on board. But also, I think that there is definitely something to be said about keeping the things separate so that there's like anonymity and comfort. And then I've recently been just kind of thinking about how I can really impact the children more directly. I think someday it would be really cool to be able to host like whether it's a weekend retreat or a week-long camp or something.
Say like a summer camp or something for kids.
Yeah, I would love to be able to do that. Because one thing I'm kind of finding is, like we kind of talked about, I grew up around a lot of law enforcement kids. It sounded like you did too. That's not the case in a lot of places, like smaller towns, smaller cities. I grew up in Philly, so like they were everywhere. But a lot of the smaller departments, that they don't necessarily have other kids who understand why their dad isn't there for Christmas or their birthday or whatever it is.
Right.
And so I want to be able to bring those people together too, so that they can be like, oh, your dad misses Christmas. Oh, you celebrate Christmas on December 16th too? Like, cool. And also give them the tools and the vocabulary and things like that to speak up if and when they need to. So I think that's very big picture, but I would really
love it.
Be able to do something like that.
I think you're going to be able to do it. And I would send my kid there. So
thanks.
I love it.
In a few years.
Yeah, I love it. Is there any final takeaways you can leave us with?
I think a couple. One is, if you don't have a community outside of law enforcement, find one. I know that it might be difficult, but you really need to find someone or someone's with high emotional IQs. And if you're having trouble finding people outside of the law enforcement space, then you might be looking in small ponds or something, because there are people out there who want to understand or don't care that they don't understand. They still want to be there to support you, and they will be there for you, even though you continue to cancel plans or you can only hang out once a month or you have a texting relationship, like whatever it is, the people are out there. You just kind of got to find them, and it's very, very worth it. And then as far as the kids, check in with them. If you're not comfortable, starting an actual sit down conversation, then just be there. Make the small moments matter. Go the extra mile. It might require, delaying your own gratification. I talked about this recently. You might have to delay your own gratification from time to time, but just be there for them, because kids are sponges and really small things can impact them for the better and for the worse. So don't overthink it. Just be there and let them know that you love them and that you're there for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And where can we find you if we want to follow you? Give us all your plugs.
My Instagram is the LT's daughter, so the LTS daughter. My podcast, like I said, is Beyond the Uniform with the LT's daughter. It's on Spotify and Apple, and I'm trying to figure out YouTube, so bear with me.
Girl.
And yeah, that's I'm also on LinkedIn, but I'm not as active. So those are the best places to find me.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time today. And hopefully we stay in touch and connect in the future.
Yes. Well, now I know you're a daughter, so you're coming.
Yeah, I'm a daughter and a police officer. I followed my dad's footsteps, which is cray. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. And for everyone listening, go give her a follow.
Thank you. This was awesome.